MSME lending in India is going through a complete rewrite.
How the lending can cater to those requirements.
The kind of contribution it makes, not just to jobs which it creates, which is roughly 25 crore jobs for last 4 years it has created. It's really pleasure to see a hall full of audience this morning in Delhi. Thank you so much. MSMEs and a very warm welcome to fellow panelists. So to begin with, I think MSMEs and digital is something which is a priority area and a hot topic, not just in India, but entire global south. And India, it becomes more relevant because the kind of contribution it makes, not just to jobs which it creates, which is roughly 25 crore jobs for last 4 years it has created, including, Udyams in informal sector, roughly contributing to 45% of exports, roughly 6.3 crores of MSME units. I think these are numbers. But what these numbers represent is moving gears and wheel of economy, and that's why it is important. I have a stellar panel with me, and the kind of role which these companies, fintechs, account aggregators, payment technologies, and other technology players in digital financial services or digital technology space, which the contribution and the role which these companies play, I think that is stupendous. However, there is also equal amount of there's a stream of thought and the challenges which fintechs or digital companies encounter in reaching out to MSMEs, and that same is true for MSMEs as well. So to cut the long story short, I think initially what I would request is to my fellow panelists to reflect upon for maybe 90 seconds, each of you, maybe you can briefly introduce yourself and reflect upon the topic of today, how digital or what role digital can play in bridging the access to MSMEs, and briefly, how is your organization contributing to that? So we have, since we have an hour, we will talk more about, your experiences, but this is just to set a tone for the day. Thank you. Maybe I can begin with Sujit.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, audience, being here. Actually, MSME लैंडिंग में बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जो हमें अब हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे यहाँ पे. सिंहटेक एक पार्ट है जहाँ पे हम लोग MSME को बूस्ट करने के लिए, इन्हांस करने के लिए वो टेक्नोलॉजी डेवलप करते हैं. हमारे पास प्री बिल्ड कुछ नहीं होता है. Based on requirement of the association, based on requirement of the regulatory, we can build, and we can help our MSME ecosystem to make it healthy and growing, and आगे वो move करे. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. I think PaySprint today works largely with SMEs and MSMEs on the business banking front. What we see today is in the industry today is that while MSME is a big segment, specifically in terms of the contribution to the GDP, but if you really look at, do we have any specific, today banks have retail banking, have got corporate banking, but banks typically don't have SME banking, right? And when I say SME banking, because the needs of an SME customer today is very different, and because he doesn't fall into retail, neither does he fall into corporate, and for us to address that particular segment of customers who are SME, MSME, who have a typical need of banking, right, who is very, very different than any of these segments, I think that's where PaySprint plays a role in terms of offering a business banking solution specifically to all of these customers. And what does it really do? It is able to bring in, aggregate everything together, especially in terms of banking and the entire transaction flow. And when aggregation of all of this happens, it allows you to start enhancing and making them much more, lending becomes much more easier from that. And I think that's where our ultimate goal is. So we really want to ensure that we're able to build in all the information, data, transactions across on one single platform for an MSME customer, and that platform becomes equally available for any lender to come and start lending, right? So, and I think that's been a biggest challenge today, especially keeping in mind that we don't have any specific product on SME, MSME, and this is something which will be able to address that gap that we feel is where we want to play a role at. So that's how PaySprint comes into play in making this happen. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning, thank you. A quick introduction to what CredAble does. We build platforms for corporates and for financial institutions to help them manage supply chain, vendors, dealers, etc. That is the fintech part of our business. We also lend to MSMEs because we are a supply chain financing and MSME lender. So we have a portfolio of loans primarily to MSMEs. This ranges from the very small, micro enterprises to medium level enterprises. With regards to the topic at discussion, I think lending, whether you do it for a large company or whether for a small company, it has the same basic. The credit evaluation has the same building blocks. The lending process is the same. The decision making is on similar parameters. The challenge when it comes to doing this for SMEs is always how well organized the information is, how easily available it is, and is the SME itself in a position to provide you with all the relevant data. And I think that's the gap that's getting closed today with the kind of technology that we have at our disposal. It is feasible today for a lending organization to take a call on the credit quality of an SME because it is able to put together data from various sources and form a coherent financial picture. That is also where the challenges lie in terms of how far we can take this. I think we've already started on this journey in terms of being able to push credit to SMEs by understanding the transactional data that is available to us today, whether through bank statement, through GST. And I think as this gets more and more integrated through the use of technology, we will be able to push more and more in terms of be more successful in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of lending institutions becoming more and more confident in taking their lending decisions on SMEs.
Thank you. Maybe Nipun, I can turn to you.
Yeah. So my name is Nipun and I represent a fintech called Finagg. At Finagg, our mission is to increase the India retail GDP by 20%. And how do we do that is basically our plan is to enable cash flow credit to 70 million businesses. What I see is, and I've been doing this for 12 years now, MSME lending in India is going through a complete rewrite. Back in the days, all the lending used to happen based on balance sheets, right? CA produced document at the end of the year, which used to go into a balance sheet, and that's what bank used to use, and majority times ask collateral, from an MSME. See, currently, because there are many digital public goods happening in India, right, which is what we see. One of them is GSTN. GSTN is now 70 months old, and it is an ERP of an ERP, right? So everybody's account payable, account receivable data resides in GSTN. So that becomes the essential part. So instead of looking at an MSME book, look at a GSTN data, the banks can actually make a lot of sense. Banking data is becoming accessible. Account aggregator, is a great tool where you give an OTP consent and your bank statement can be fetched. The KYC part, right, like your Aadhaar, Udyam has been built, which is on a digital public good. So all this India stack digital public goods is actually making this happen. Right from underwriting to assessment to basically getting payments. India is the only country where making payment is free. Right? Collecting on UPI is almost 0 rupees, right? This is the only country where actually getting a KYC done is completely digitized. That is the reason for next 10 years or 12 years, the boom will happen in the MSME lending, and that will happen based on this digital public goods which has been built. Yeah. And that is what Finagg is focusing on to get it enabled. Thank you.
So Thanks, Nipun. I think you brought in a very interesting piece to the conversation through digital public infrastructure and filling that deficit what digital can bring to MSMEs. That's an interesting conversation. We'll carry on this thread, but I'll move to Dr. Sindhu.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Sindhu Bhaskar, and I'm chairman of ESG Group of Companies based at Cambridge Innovation Center, MIT Boston. And ESG Group has 4 verticals: neobanking and global wallet system, agri-tech, health tech, ed tech with carbon credits. And I'm also joint president of MSME Business Forum India. So when we talk of what digital can do for MSME, what I feel that we are, India, as a matter of fact, is also in a zone of flux wherein we are not only to think about ourselves and about our MSME, but how it is going to get integrated to the global lending scenario because of the new technologies, new concept of tokenization, fractionalization, how your lending can adhere to those concepts with CBDCs, digital currencies, how the lending can cater to those requirements of CBDC and digital currencies, how the KYC and the ethics of digital ethics can be integrated into it, and of course the identity part is very important, which is the KYC part, as our fellow panelist was talking of. So all these things are giving a totally new dimension to MSME business funding. And the banking aspect and the lending norms remain the same, but they have got a new dimension and a new garment. And that is why we have to focus and subscribe to those concepts of digital inventions and discoveries that we are seeing every day that is coming, and how AI is going to create solutions for us, how machine vision, machine learning, all those aspects, robotics, chatbot, how they are going to help us in our lending parameters, and how we can create the proper infrastructure for MSME lending so that it becomes interoperable with other sectors of society, as well as it becomes global and local, so as we call it glocal. So this is what we have to discuss, and we'll be talking about all those things. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Sindhu. I think you brought in another dimension to the discussion, which I hope to, brought in later on, which is AI and ML. I think interesting conversations. But, everyone spoke very good about digital, MSME and role of digital in MSME. So, सबने काफी अच्छा बात किया. But if that is a situation, why still, MSMEs face issues with access to credit? Probably there are certain user experience related issues, there are certain risks associated with this, and when we talk about risks, I'm alluding to risks associated with cyber security or other kind of risks. So which brings me to Ranjit, who is a part of a large organization which deals with MSMEs and fintechs. So Ranjit, all of us spoke very good about MSMEs and the role of digital, but what are the risks associated, and how what role CredAble is playing probably to mitigate a few of those risks?
As you pointed out, right, this is obviously when we talk about digitization and the easy availability of data, being a great blessing for SMEs. What we need to understand is that this infrastructure is still, while it has become available, it is still coming together. There are significant gaps in terms of how we are able to leverage this data, how a comprehensive picture is being formed from across various separate platforms. We spoke about, for example, GST being a rich source of data. but GST alone is not the only piece of data we consume, right? Because GST, just to take this point forward, GST will give you transactional information. Where has a company purchased and how much a company has purchased and how much it has sold, from whom it has purchased to whom it has sold. That very rich information is something that's available to you. But it doesn't at the same time also tells you how much cash came through, right? You may have sold to somebody, but the cash never came home or came home after a long time. As a lender, that's of paramount importance to me, because lenders need to see where the cash is. So then we move to the bank statement, right? And we try and trace the cash there. Just a small example of how you need to blend together, integrate different disparate sources of information into one comprehensive picture which can feed into the credit opinion. I think that's where the gaps are. Very often you fall between these various blocks of information, namely the GST, the bank statement, the KYC. Are we able to know what are the kind of related parties that a particular business has, with whom they are doing business? Are we able to map out the entire business group, etc.? So that is also where the risks lie, because that is where there will be our inability to map out, as a lender, our inability to map out the true financial picture of a business. Or let me put it this way, that we see a gap which is unresolved, and therefore we take a conservative call that, okay, let's not lend to this business, right? But that's how, eventually decision making pans out. If you don't have complete information, you would rather wait for it or not do the transaction at all, both of which are detrimental to doing business for the SME as well as for us as a lender. Now, and the result overall is that even with the information infrastructure that is at our disposal and our ability to put it together, we still have very significant rejection rates for SMEs that come to us for loans. How we are trying to tackle these gaps, I think partly the answer is leveraging technology actively, which is making an effort to actually integrate these various disparate sources of information at our end, or working with other technology partners who can help us do this. The other aspect also is to constantly work with our customers, with industry organizations, try and impress upon the potential borrowers that they need to be a lot more transparent in terms of providing us information through access to all these sources. I think overall, I think an interesting initiative in this regard has been the recent news that the government is also working on building a credit evaluation or a lending platform which lenders can subscribe to, and that would actually be quite interesting to see how that evolves, because what that effort seems to be something that is talking about what I am saying, which is tying together different pieces of different digital infrastructure into an integrated whole and giving a credit evaluation or a credit rating based on the various transactional information, and which the lender can consume and take a decision. And the other benefit it will have also is that this is not something that will be limited, or an infrastructure that is limited to a single organization, but something that is standardized across the board. And so that's all the lenders are then on a common platform in terms of, and there's a common vocabulary you would be using in terms of discussing or expressing the credit quality of a particular lender. So I think that's an interesting space to watch out for in the months to come.
No, thanks, Ranjit. You pretty elaborated upon challenges and the role which you guys are playing in bridging that gap. So, which brings me to Dr. Sindhu, because India and in many other countries we have seen digital public infrastructure. India particularly, you kind of alluded that unified lending interface (ULI), and then there is an identity stack we have in India, like Aadhaar. Then we have a payment stack which is like UPI. There are rails in form of digital public infrastructure. We have online document storing facility, DigiTalker. Now also we are talking about Bhumi Aadhaar, something like that. So on one hand, there are lots of infrastructure, digital infrastructure or digital public infrastructure, which is already rolled out in the country. Now, Dr. Sindhu, you are someone who operates out of Innovation Center at Cambridge. Your organization works in multiple countries. When we were discussing backstage, you also told me that you are into agri-tech, you are into fintech. There is a neo-bank operations going on. So, which I would like to bring you into this conversation from a wider perspective and to understand, not just in India but in across global South where you have operations. What are the practical nuances or practical barriers which MSMEs face? Because if there is so much of infrastructure and willingness available to connect and support MSMEs digitally, why still this issue kind of gains all the priority in policy circles, in business and investor circles? So what are those practical barriers?
Thank you for the question. See, the basic point is that when we talk of MSME, we just talk of MSME as a unit itself, just isolated unit. That creates a problem. And that is where we have to change our mindset, and we have to understand that MSME unit is just one of the islands of the huge setup. So every MSME unit has to be part of the supply chain. Then only its activity will be continuous and consistent. And once you have consistent and continuous activity, you can be in a better position to service your loan, to take additional quantum of loan, and you will have a better KYC and a better rating model. Now, with these concepts in MSME there is a glut in urban areas. So everything is now shifting to rural areas, and we are talking of industrialization of rural areas. Now, those units, small units, tiny units, MSMEs, are all part of the same segment. So what we have to do, we have to talk of the wider area wherein every unit has to contribute. Now, moreover, this is just a country specific. Outside country also, there are areas wherein MSMEs can interact with each other. In one of my verticals, agri-tech, what I have done, I have created an ecosystem in which these tiny units, which I call semi-urban or rural units, not exactly MSME, but small MSME units, I am trying to integrate it and connect it to overseas MSMEs. And there is no talk of bilateral trade, that settling in like barter system, that okay, I settle it with your currency, you settle it with my currency, and things like that. What we are talking of, that you make the shipment and get money in Forex. With that Forex, what happens? You are creating Forex economy for yourself, and MSME will have more facilities as export oriented unit, and they can get better facilities, better recognition from banks also, because of the turnover system. Now, all the banks, they are doing the credit assessment on turnover method also, that okay, what is your turnover, this is how it will. But that turnover is going in which way? Whether it is connected to the wider area or wider ecosystem or not, whether it is a part of that supply chain or not. Until unless we make that assessment, that is where all MSMEs are faltering and they are having this problem, because everything becomes a sheltered unit. So if they fail, the loan fails. If loan fails, government has to capitalize the banks. Why this sort of system? There should be all those loans can be converted into, say, a token or NFTs, and it can be dispersed or it can be sold to different HNIs, which can get that money and that can recapitalize the bank. So there is no obligation for the bank and there is no weakness for the bank. And even government does not have to dole out money to banks to recapitalize them because the loans are failing. Now it is a long-term loan, so these MSMEs have sufficient time to repay their loan. So with these type of concepts, we can definitely create a change in the whole scenario in MSME funding. And these are, I believe, with the new technologies, like with AI and all that. See, you are basically, as a banker, I have been a banker myself. So as a banker, what do? We just try to get details of the project. What is the unit going to do? What is going to be the income? What is your projection 5 years, 10 years, last 2 years if you are a working unit, things like that. But when you go deeper into it and create the whole, their social data, their home residence data, how many members are there, how many members are earning, what is their earning, what are they doing, all those related aspects, when you compile them and when you put it to AI, it will give you a better and a totally different result and a totally different system of assessment of loan. And that loan will have a better rate of success. And since we are not able to follow all that, we are still moving in patches. That is why everywhere the MSME funding is lagging and they are facing all this problem. As a matter of fact, there is a requirement of about $5.2 trillion because 90% of the MSMEs are not getting the funding. So I think these are the basic yardsticks on which we should look at.
Thank you so much. I think you again brought a new twist to the conversation in terms of tokenization and blockchain and alternate, maybe DeFi, decentralized finance. So before we proceed ahead, since we do not have a stopwatch here, if there is someone from organizers, can you tell us, we started a little late, how much time do we have? 10:30, right? Yeah. Still wind up. So, okay, great. Thank you. That helps. Because I also want audience to, participate into the discussion. So, there's some time for them. So, great. I think before I'll come to you, Nipun, a little later because there is certain heavy stuff we are expecting from you. But let me move to gentleman on my right side, Mr. Singh. You spoke about, we have heard, our panelists talking about different technologies, DPIs, DeFi, tokenization, policy priority, and all the, developments which are positive developments. But still, if you look at India, you are based out of Jaipur. You have multiple verticals from cyber security to, part of a payment network, and you're also, backstage, you told me you were trying to explore different alternatives with some government agencies as well. So now, even let's see at the UPI. So there's a lot of alternate data and the relevance of alternate data for bridging access to finance for MSMEs. Now, although we have so much infrastructure and even intent in place, so what do you think, what is the reason for there's a huge credit gap for MSMEs in India? What is the reason for that?
थैंक यू सर. एक्चुअली इंडिया में सबसे बड़ा लैक है डेटा का. सोशल मीडिया पे देखिए सबके डेटा भरे पड़े हैं, इंस्टाग्राम हो, फेसबुक हो, बहुत सारे डेटा भरे पड़े हैं. लेकिन जहाँ डेटा की क्रेडिबिलिटी डेटा की बात आती है, बैंकिंग डेटा की बात आती है, किसी के पास नहीं है. 70% SME ऐसे हैं जो कैश में काम करते हैं. अभी UPI आने के बाद बहुत सारे लोग कैशलेस हो गए हैं, लेकिन बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जो चल रही हैं. तो वहाँ पे सबसे बड़ा जो गैप है हमारे लिए वो है लिमिटेड फाइनेंशियल डेटा. कोई भी बैंक है, रेगुलेटरी बॉडी है, RBI है, बैंक को भी RBI के गाइडलाइन पे काम करना पड़ता है. बहुत सारे SME बोलते हैं कि मेरे पास डेटा नहीं है, हमें लोन चाहिए, आप लोन दे दो. कंप्लेन भी करते हैं, लेकिन डेटा चाहिए. अगर मैं एज ए बैंकर अगर बात करूं तो बैंक हूं, तो अगर मुझे किसी को सामने वाले को लोन देना है तो नीड सम एविडेंस, सब प्रूफ कि आपका बिजनेस है या नहीं है, जैसे सिंधु सर ने बोला था। तो वो चीज़ें चाहिए, डेटा हमें बिल्ड करना पड़ेगा और डेटा हमें चाहिए ही चाहिए आगे प्रोसेस करने के लिए कि मेरा लोन रिकवर होगा कि नहीं होगा। कोई भी एसएमई, एक एसएमई आता है बोलता है कि मुझे लोन चाहिए, वैसे बैंक के पास हज़ारों एसएमई हैं। अभी जीडीपी में भी, इंडिया के जीडीपी में 30% स्टेक एसएमई क्या है। हमारे जो यूनियन मिनिस्टर हैं वो मांझी सर, वो भी चाहते हैं कि जो हमारा कंट्रीब्यूशन है एसएमई का वो 50% हो, ताकि जो छोटे हैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट के जो स्टेट हैं, जो स्टेट हमसे छूटे रह गए हैं, वो भी ग्रो करें। जब छोटे लेवल पे, लोकल लेवल पे कोई डेवलपमेंट होगा तो ही होगा, लेकिन उसके लिए अपने को जो डेटा गैप है, जो फाइनेंशियल डेटा है फॉर द टेकिंग अ लोन फ्रॉम द बैंक और एनबीएफसी और एनी फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन, दैट इज नेसेसरी एज पर द रेगुलेटरी, ताकि वो कर सके।
बात ऐड करना चाहूँगा, आपने काफ़ी दुखती रग पे हाथ रखने की कोशिश की है, लेकिन ये इंटेंट इशू है या कैपेबिलिटी इशू है, बिकॉज आप डील करते हैं फिनटेक्स एमएसएमईज के साथ, तो ये कैपेबिलिटी इशू है क्या? मतलब इज इट अ कैपेबिलिटी इशू दैट बिकॉज more than 85% of, and I am being little liberal in that, more than 85% of MSME enterprises are micro. They are in fact, numbers say 95 से ज़्यादा हैं, but I am just being a little liberal on that. So, and these are the ones which are located in the hinter heartland. गांव खेड़े में, तालुका में, मंडल लेवल पे, डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे, वहाँ पे ये हैं। तो ये क्या इंटेंट का इशू है या कैपेबिलिटी का इशू है? और अगर ये कैपेबिलिटी का इशू है या इंटेंट का इशू है, तो किस तरह के इंसेंटिव फ्रेमवर्क या कुछ पॉलिसी प्रायोरिटीज़ गवर्नमेंट इसमें ला सकती है?
थैंक यू सर। देखिए, फ्रेमवर्क की और इंटेंट की, उसमें मुझे तो नहीं लगता कि इशू है। गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने या स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने हर जगह पे डिस्ट्रिक्ट एमएसएमई के लिए बोल रहा हूँ, एमएसएमई के लिए डिस्ट्रिक्ट उद्योग सेंटर कुछ बना रखा है, ज़्यादा मुझे पता नहीं है, लेकिन हाँ उस तरह का फ्रेमवर्क उन्होंने बना रखा है, जहाँ पे जाके वो लोन से रिलेटेड जो भी क्वेरी होती है या बिजनेस से रिलेटेड क्वेरी होती है, वो चीज़ें फुलफ़िल कर सकते हैं। अगर बड़ी गैप की बात करें तो वो है एजुकेशन। अगर मैं एसएमई बनना चाहता हूँ, कोई बिजनेस सेटअप करना चाहता हूँ, तो उसके लिए मुझे ट्रेनिंग लेनी पड़ेगी। पहले मुझे अवेयर होना पड़ेगा कि हमारे बिजनेस को स्केल करने के लिए, आगे ले जाने के लिए हाउ स्टेप वी कैन फॉलो, किस लेवल पे लेके जाना है। वो विज़न होना चाहिए, उनके पास एक प्रोजेक्ट होनी चाहिए कि हमें इस लेवल पे इस तरह से काम करना है, कैसे करना है। अगर उनके पास नहीं है तो जो उद्योग, जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट हैं जो इनपावर करते हैं, बहुत सारे इंक्यूबेशन सेंटर अभी हैं, यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं, गवर्नमेंट साइड से स्टार्टअप इंडिया, वहाँ पे जाके वो सारी चीज़ें गेन कर सकते हैं। सोशल मीडिया पे लाके जो शॉर्ट वीडियो देखते हैं ना सब लोग, तो एसएमई के लिए भी कुछ वीडियो बने हुए हैं, स्टार्टअप इंडिया पे जाके देख सकते हैं। हमारे जो एसएमई मिनिस्ट्री है वहाँ के पोर्टल पे बहुत सारे वीडियो हैं जहाँ से वो इन्फॉर्मेशन ले सकते हैं और उसको ग्रो कर सकते हैं। तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं जो हम ये नहीं बोल सकते कि इंटेंट का प्रॉब्लम है या क्या है, लेकिन हाँ आपका विज़न, अगर आप बिजनेस में आना चाहते हैं, आप कुछ करना चाहते हैं, लोगों को रोज़गार देना चाहते हैं, तो आपका विज़न क्लियर होना चाहिए कि आप दूसरे को रोजी रोटी चला रहे हैं, उनका घर चला रहे हैं, तो उस लेवल पे आपको जाकर सोचना पड़ेगा। आप नौकरी नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो वो बोल्डनेस आप में आनी चाहिए, वो डिसीजन मेकिंग आप में आने चाहिए, और जो रेगुलेटरी आपको ग्रो करने के लिए जो भी डॉक्यूमेंट आपको इकट्ठे करने हैं, वो सारी चीज़ें प्लस एजुकेशन सब कुछ आपको लेके चलना पड़ेगा। सर आई एम राइट?
No, I think that was really useful. So, coming to Anand, right?
Yeah, Anand. Yeah. I'll just add to this point.
I'm coming to you only.
Okay.
So I pick up what Dr. Sindhu said, and what Mr. Singh said. There's a lot of informality in MSME segment in India, and we know that. We are aware of this. Although there are different initiatives which have been taken up. One of the areas what we also have observed is the level of trust in digital ecosystem, especially among those entrepreneurs who are in semi-urban or rural areas. There can be multiple reasons for that. Maybe someone did not have a very good user experience. Someone doesn't want to be part of a digital network because of multiple reasons. So what could be possible steps, or what could be those initiatives which could promote digital trust among MSMEs, so that this we kind of plug in these issues of data paucity or maybe capability or things like that.
Yeah, so I think, yeah. So I'll first cover the point. When you said that major MSMEs is micro industry, micro customers of ours, right? And basically the rural areas. Now, look at the kind of customer they are. I mean, they are customers who are doing businesses, but they're also short of money because they also, obviously, even in the daily running, they are like tight of cash. Right? And then also doing business. So the question is always about the balance between what they spend for their personal needs and what they spend for businesses, right? Now let's assume that if a small business like Kirana shop hai and we have given him a low 20,000 rupees loan, right, for his business. Now, the chance could be that someday he feels that the 20,000 rupees loan hai and then which is using for business, and suddenly feels that he has a requirement at home, and and he may want to take that money and probably use it for his personal needs. Now, how does somebody manage this? How does somebody ensure that the loan that is given for business gets used for business and not for his personal needs? And I think therefore technology comes to play, right? And if you're able to build robust platforms where you're able to build systems in place where you may also look at more like maybe a daily credit and debit happening across his account, so as to ensure the money that goes in also gets typically used only for business and not for his personal needs. And I think that's where technology and fintechs have come to play a big role. And we're building systems where you can measure, monitor the money that you've really paid him across really gets used it for the right reasons, right? And you don't give him that leverage of open so that he can probably use. And I think, and that, what does it help him to do? That helps him to ensure that he's got better credit scores, and also helps him that he's able to lend much more in the way it works, right? And Anand, this has been a classic example that we've done. We've seen in our times where we've done lending to to small businesses, and if you've done a tight crunching of looking at data, we had like massive, the chargebacks are very less, or the paybacks are very good. So I think we have used technology can be very effectively used to make some of these things. Coming to the point of how do you build trust? You're right. I think this kind of segment that we work with, largely if you've seen, they've all been exposed to money lenders, and money lenders, how they are, right? And today we're getting them into a formal set of credit. How do you really ensure? I think what's more important for somebody to build trust is openness. In terms of openness, there has to be, whatever you do has to be quick, and the speed convenience has to be there when you're looking at lending. The kind of charge that you do across has to be much lower than the normal circumstances. More importantly, it has to be flexible. It has to give him the flexibility of payment whenever he needs to make the payment, right? And also largely should have been a non-collateral based. And if you're able to bridge all of these across and ensure that you're able to work across the kind of data that he has in terms of transaction, all that, and kind of other set of data, and offer him loan, which is much more transparent in the way it looks like, and also in terms of payment, you're able to start building that trust. I think what's more important, that segment, is to build that kind of a trust for you, and that can only come in, I think, and I sincerely feel technology would play a big role in bringing this up, right? Because you have technology which is everything's open, it is convenience, it has speed, it's flexible, and once an MSME customer is able to look at some of these, then he starts building up trust in terms of, and then he's also, I think also it also will add up to the education in terms of the right set of behavior, in terms of financial behavior, for him to believe that if he does the right behavior, it will enable him to also get better loans, right? So I think all of that will fall in place as long as we're able to offer this.
No, thank you. I think you kind of plugged in that loop, which began from Dr. Sindhu to Mr. Singh, and you kind of plugged it. There's another interesting thread or theme which has emerged out of this conversation, is alternate technologies, new generation technologies, AI, ML, and then Dr. Sindhu also alluded to the blockchain and the other pieces. So I'll come to you, Nipun. You heard all of us, and there is a paucity of data. There are data-based and technology-based solutions which can, bridge this gap. In India, we have something called account aggregator kind of framework, which is a consent-based framework. Then on other piece, we have OCAN in place. Then, there are so many digital lenders which are playing their bit. Institutions like SIDBI, NABARD, the Government of India is there. And everyone is promoting technology, be it an artificial, and the role which AI plays, especially on algorithmic levels. The speed or swiftness with which, processing happens. Not just, disbursement of loans, but also application of technology on reaching out to a customer, onboarding a customer across the life cycle, appraisals, sanction, disbursements, and then, a recovery process. So how do you see it, spanning up, and role of particularly emerging technologies, MTech, because RBI also has a repository on MTech. So MTech is getting now from digital to fintech, fintech to MTech. So how do you see that spanning up in next few years, and what do you think that, it's not about do you think, but I think how soon these technologies are going to plug the gaps, most of these gaps which we have just spoken for last 40-45 minutes?
So thank you very much. That's a very interesting question. But before I go and answer this question from my perspective, see what has happened to UPI, right? Everybody in this room would have used UPI, and so UPI was not a very new innovation, right? We were always able to do bank transfers through net banking. UPI democratized it, right? It made a very fantastic UI. Government gave an incentive. Once the bank used this UPI, the infrastructure cost, or there's no transaction fees. And actually that created an incentive for people to move to cashless models, correct? And that produced a lot of data, So I personally foresee that for MSME credit gap to solve, there has to be many things which have to come in play. Technology, of course, I will speak, but there is a policy intervention. There has to be an incentive given to MSME to digitize. And order digitize its payments through UPI, but also digitize its invoices, right? If government come and say, if you digitize, today, in this current budget, Honorable Minister has announced up to 12 lakhs, you don't get, you literally pay no tax. And you will see suddenly that 5% people used to pay taxes will actually increase, right? Because there is a real incentive to people to come to the formal system. So there has to be an incentive, a large enough incentive for MSMEs to actually go and produce this data. This infrastructure exists, there has to be an incentive. Incentive can come in cost of fund. If you actually go and have a GST return and banking data through account aggregator, you get a loan at 4% cheaper than the regular rate. See, all these MSMEs are taking lending, right? Because if you look at, aaj ki date mein every MSME is a lender. Because technically, if he is giving services to anybody, he is actually as a lender. Lender looks at intention to pay, ability to pay, and apply a cost of fund. So he would be happy to go to the bank to borrow money at a cheaper rate. But the bank, there has to be incentive for him to digitize. Aisa nahi hona chahiye, kal government keeps on asking him, where do you get all this money from, right? So there has to be no harassment to him. So that is very important. So in addition to technology, there has to be policy intervention, specific policy intervention from government to reduce the rate, or by banks by introducing credit guarantees. There is a CGT MSME in place, not very effective, right? It's been there for 10 years plus, but those credit guarantee, in some of the other developing economies where MSME's lending has actually played a very important role, there are 13, 14 private credit guarantee schemes. In India, there is only one, right, which is also run by SIDBI, right, CGT MSE, for actually is MSME. So those credit guarantee scheme have to come into forelight. See, coming back to, on the positive side, I look at this gap will get reduced significantly in next 4 to 5 years. This gap on MSME credit is absolutely going to get reduced. Like what UPI has done, this credit to MSME will become as soon as the MSME starts getting credit. So we at Finagg works with a lot of banks, right? Now, and the largest private sector bank in India and the third largest globally, right? What we have seen in last 12 months with that journey is that they are able to process more than 2,500 applications a day, and specifically credit to MSME through technology. So, this technology and this data digitization will reduce the gap. I personally foresee in next 5 to 10 years is going to be the golden years for MSMEs in India, specifically by getting them credit through the digital public goods. With respect to AI, right, at Finagg, and I think one of my fellow panelists talked about, capital. I give a money to an MSME, he can use this money in his business or in personal need, like medical or maybe for a wedding or maybe to stock market or buy a land. So there has to be a control or checkpoint where this capital is getting used. So at Finagg, one of the program we run, we work with large FMCG players, like in Unilever or ITC, and go and fund Kirana players, right? But we don't give money in the hand of Kirana. We give money to the Kirana to buy inventory from a brand. Now, in that case, there is a protected end use, right? So end use is protected. I'm not giving you money where he can use money for anything else other than buy inventory. So if he's going to buy 10 packets of Ashirwad Atta, eventually he's going to sell 10 packets in the next 4 days and he's going to pay back to me. So those kind of models have to build, and that can only happen when banks, which is what they are doing right now. So there is a great adoption rate in which the banks are adopting technology. There is a big gap. Of course, the gap is much bigger. It will come and reduce. The gap will start reducing. It may take few years to reduce, but at the CAGR it is reducing. It's more than 100%, right? So the gap will keep on reducing as we go along. With respect to AI, there are, like a few of my colleagues mentioned, the data availability, the GST data is there, banking data is there, profile data is there, Udyam data is there. I think the AI and the ML model has to make sense out of that. Has to create a pseudo balance sheet, pseudo P&L, right? So, instead of, back in the days, started accountant, and I'm not against anybody, but they used to build the balance sheet based on what the promoter used to say, right? And then banks used to use that balance sheet and do some data assessment on that. Now, this data transaction, the technology and AI ML has to build a balance sheet at real-time level. The monitoring has to be real-time level. When to double down? Who is the MSME where I can give more credit? Where is the SME where I have to stop the credit right now? Where is the SME where I have to build more controls, correct? So this can all happen if the banks, and which they will use AI ML, right? Alternate data, and also use their current data which they already have in the banking infrastructure. And what is, again, I come back to my original point. India is the best suited economy right now for MSME lending. This is the only place in globe where trillions and trillions, $9 trillion of invoices are digitized in GSTN system. And that is per month. Banking data is coming through account aggregator, not only banking data, not telcos, and all the other data sources are coming. DigiLocker is digitizing how you sign documents and how you keep repository, right? Udyam, is actually digitizing the MSME registration for MSME. There has to be, government has to have serious incentives, is what I believe, for, banks, other than what they do currently, to basically, this to explode. This will explode. It may take a test at one point of time and explode. That's my personal view.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Exhibition India Groups, we thank our esteemed panelists. And may I request the moderator of the session to kindly present a memento to all our panelists and make this moment a little more memorable. May I request you, Mr. Handoo, to kindly present a memento to Mr. Sujit Singh. We now present a memento to Mr. S. Anand. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Ranjit Singh. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. Now, on behalf of Exhibition India, present a memento to Mr. Nipun Kohli. Thank you so much, Mr. Kohli, for sharing your thoughts with us. May we now present a memento to Dr. Sindhu Bhaskar. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning and so also sharing your experience and your thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you all to kindly put your hands together as we thank our panelists, essentially the moderator of the session, Mr. Jatinder Handoo. And on behalf of Exhibition India, I take it absolutely as an honor and a privilege to present a memento to the moderator of the session, Mr. Handoo.